increase in debt limit. Section 72001, modification of limitation on the public debt. Line 20. The limitation under Section 3101B of Title 31 United States Code, as most recently increased by Section 401B of Public Law 118.5, 31 U.S.C. 3101 Note, is increased by $5 trillion. $5 trillion. That's the real number here. That's where the rubber hits the road in real life.
Republicans just pushed a bill so bloated with billionaire tax breaks, they had to hike the debt ceiling by $5 trillion. And Senator Whitehouse isn't letting them get away with it. If you're tired of the fakery in Congress, subscribe to Liberal Lens and stay informed.
In this place where big money now rules, and in which fakery is now the order of the day, and numbers no longer have to be real, there is one point that stands out, and that is that the fakery on the floor is belied by the language of the bill. If these assertions were true, they would not need to raise the debt limit. All of this fun and games, all of this parliamentary mischief that is happening right now crashes into the fact that in real markets, in the real world, outside of this fakery, the debt limit is actually a real thing. And I will take a moment to read from page 754 of this midnight monstrosity what it actually says, where it collides with the real world. Subtitle C, increase in debt limit. Section 72001, modification of limitation on the public debt. Line 20. The limitation under Section 3101B of Title 31 United States Code, as most recently increased by Section 401B of Public Law 118.5, 31 U.S.C. 3101 Note, is increased by $5 trillion. $5 trillion. That's the real number here. That's where the rubber hits the road in real life. The maneuver that is being pulled right now to avoid that fact, the fact that the debt limit has to be increased by $5 trillion so the Republicans can give immense tax breaks to billionaires, has not been used for this before. I used it once. In the year 2000, a deal had been struck on how to score activities of the Power Marketing Administration. Does anybody really know about the Power Marketing Administration? It's a small thing. Over the years, the Congressional Budget Office started scoring the program differently than the Senate had agreed to in 2000. So in 2023 and 2024, Senate Budget Chair, me, and the House Budget Chair, Jody Arrington, on a bipartisan basis, invoked this section to have CBO return to the original Senate agreement and not the variation that they had created. This is what Section 312 has been used for, to resolve technical ambiguity to advance a bipartisan appropriation deal, not to create Senate floor fakery belied by the $5 trillion debt limit hike that Republicans are obliged to pass to make good on this huge billionaire blowout that we're forcing through the Senate floor now. I yield the floor.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse took to the Senate floor to expose what he calls the fakery behind the Republicans' so-called Beautiful-for-Billionaires bill, a massive tax scheme that gifts the wealthiest Americans with enormous breaks while driving up the national debt by a staggering $5 trillion. Let that sink in. At a time when working families are struggling with rent, healthcare, and grocery bills, Republicans are pushing a bill that quietly inflates the debt ceiling just to fund tax giveaways for the ultra-rich. Not for clean energy, not for middle-class relief, but for billionaires. And it's right there, in the bill text, page 754, section 72001, a $5 trillion increase in the debt ceiling. That's not a talking point. That's legislative fact. Senator Whitehouse didn't hold back. He called out the deliberate use of obscure parliamentary maneuvers, tools once reserved for rare bipartisan adjustments, now being used to smuggle in corporate favors. He reminded the chamber that these tricks are not harmless. They have real consequences, just like the Trump-era tax cuts, which exploded the deficit while offering crumbs to ordinary Americans. This bill isn't about fiscal responsibility. It's about rigging the system. And what makes it worse? The dishonesty. The same lawmakers who rail against it are voting to blow it wide open for the sake of the wealthiest 0.1%. It's a reminder that what happens in Congress isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about priorities. It's about who benefits and who's left behind. If you're new to the channel, please support by subscribing. Let's build a community that holds power accountable and fights for economic justice, not political lies.